Okay, people, so play it by ear. It's a new web series, and AJ brought it to me, right? Hit me up and was like, yo, you should give this a look. So that's what I did, people. It's 6 episodes, right? With the first 3 episodes already up on the YouTube channel, and the remaining three about to drop any time now, I believe. The series is created by Emily Ann Zisko and Simon Kincaid, right? They both directed it and both co-wrote it along with Brian Riley and Dillon Bentlage, who both did an episode each. The series is produced by Dillon Bentlage, Brian Riley, Simon Kincaid, Emily Ann Zisko, and Virginia Blatter. Ingrid Sanchez is on cinematography. Brian Riley edits. Maria Marchant, production design. Set decoration, we have Bunny Malongu and Lindy van der Mura. Right. Makeup is Dominika Zawada. And our cast. Well, we have got Mila, played by Emily Ann Zisko. We've got Lukas, played by Dillon Bentlage. There's Mila's best friend, Sammy, played by Enoza Ogbedi. Mila's mother, who is played by Nevada Gray. Her dad, who's played by Michael Minnis. There's Lukas's mother, played by Germaine Goudet. I believe his dad, Martinge, is played by Didier Zillinger Molenza. There's Ridley, played by Elise Rose Martin. Fenner, played by Natasha Firestone. There's Joan, played by Jordan Van Cleef. Barry, played by Danny Abrahams. His assistant, played by Jack Spellman. The vape shop clerk, played by Brian Riley. Oh, actually, Lukas's dad is played by Franz Bentlage. So, yes, there we go. Now, the gist of the story, people, is this. Lukas, originally from the Netherlands, and Mila, born and raised in California, are college sweethearts, planning on moving in together after graduation. But when their careers force them to stay apart, they resolve to rise to the challenge of a long-distance relationship. Mila is accepted into a year-long screenwriters program in Los Angeles, and Lukas moves across the world to work for a magazine in Amsterdam. For 1 year, they'll try to make things work, but cracks in their bond appear sooner than expected. Right? So, that's the thing, right? Long-term relationships. And I kind of feel with something like this, everyone has probably experienced this to some degree, right? It might not be the other side of the world. It might be, a different part of London, right? Or New York, or in a different state, part of the country. You know what I mean? There's these situations that come up. And it's the coping mechanisms that we have to deal with them, right? Which are definitely addressed in episode 1. Well, I say one aspect of that, right? And it's, you know what I mean? Because you'll be thinking about each other. So what do you do about that, right? When you're feeling a little hot and steamy. So that's what we get, right? There's a lot of dirty talk, um, which always just very problematic, right? Very problematic. Something. Now, I did think something was very well, I think something came up in the midst of the dirty talk, right? Which I thought was interesting. Because she says she's thin and he kind of stops and it's just like, yo, right? Which I thought was interesting, right? It talks a lot about the dynamic there, but it's trying to make time for each other. And as mentioned, right, you can see there's cracks. Episode 2, we well, also in episode 1, we also see other things that could create cracks, right? Episode 2. So episode 1 is in September. Episode 2, we jump back in time, right? It's June and they've just graduated. So they just graduated and, they're with friends and family celebrating, right? All celebrating and talking about like the issues, right? What they're going to do, how they're going to move forward, just all of that kind of thing. So I thought that one, because they're high school sweethearts, but we don't necessarily know at this point how long they've actually dated, right? Did they meet in the last year? Has it been from the beginning of school? Like what? We don't really know. But we know they've been together for a bit. Now, just in this episode, you wonder, right? What from everything we see, we wonder about the notion of long distance, right? Can this couple even contemplate something like that? I think we definitely see these moments that kind of speak about the way that they communicate, right? Which is brought up by Sammy, you know, and it is pointed out that they both have issues on that front. But I think one big thing as well, it's it's the whole thing about dreams, right? When one person has one sort of dream, now what are the expectations that your partner throws themselves completely into what you want, right? I think that was very telling in episode 2. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? What are you expecting the other person to do? You know, how much of their dreams are you factoring in? Is it's all well and good going, we want to be together, we want to do all of this is the plan, blah blah blah. But and especially when they don't have a job to go to, you know, it's like, well, what do you want them to do? Right? What do you think they'll do? You know what their interests are, you know what they love and all of that kind of stuff. So what is that, right? What are you expecting from them? Also, you have family out there, they don't. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think the responses are very telling. Very telling. Episode 3 now. Episode 3 is called Crush. I didn't really feel that was necessarily the right title for it. Right? I feel something more along the lines of like temptation, right? Or pull factors. You know what I mean? Something else, because what we're seeing in this episode is, again, we've got this time issue, right? They're not really making time for each other, or just calendars aren't aligning. But then they both got these things that could fracture everything, right? We're seeing from both points of views. And I think it's played in a way where, although it seems more apparent from one direction, you can clearly see in the other one that it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. So that's very interesting, you know. I think we get a good dynamic, from Lukas and Mila. I think that, and the situation, I think it's pretty believable, right? I think emotionally they're giving us everything we need to buy into this. There's just a few things that sometimes, like Barry felt a little over the top. You know what I mean? That felt a little over the top. And so did, I think Martin is Lucas's boss in Amsterdam, I think. And again, that was a little bit, we didn't get that much, but to be fair, on both regards, we don't really get those roles haven't really been fleshed out so far, right? We've only seen these characters briefly. So, I think over time, possibly that that will have more life brought into it, and we will get more understanding about them. But at the moment, a little bit caricature-ish, though, right? I think the Barry character, you can say, definitely points to be considered, right? And especially when you factor in both Miller and Lucas have just graduated. They both graduated, so they're in jobs which they don't necessarily have the skills for yet, right? It's developing your own voice, developing styles, right? Gaining experience to be able to write these things in a certain way. So I think you can't have everything fall into place, right? Even though it kind of has in a way, right? So I think that's all very interesting. I think I like the dynamic between Mila and Sammy. That works very well. And Lucas and I think it's Fenna who he's working with. So, with her, right? Those dynamics work, right? It's interesting to see the contrast between LA and Amsterdam. And you are just kind of looking at all of this and thinking, what's going to happen with these two? Now, I definitely feel, right, it looks like there's only one way this is ever going to go, right? Now, maybe things do turn around because we got 3 episodes left, right? We got 3 episodes left. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, where they take this, what they decide to do with it. Because the way things are left in episode 3, we have this word being said, right? Now, there's no context to that. It could mean anything, right? Could mean anything. Who knows what the rules were when the long distance was formulated? Maybe that plays into that, and we see that in episode 4. Who knows? But yeah, things aren't necessarily looking good for this couple, but neither are great, right? Like, that's the thing. We're seeing, you know, both acting poorly. You know what I mean? Both not making enough time, not really, you know, thinking about the other person's feelings. So I think it's handled well. I think the way it's being cut together works, right? Like the running scene, running and cycling scene, that all, it worked to build that emotional impact. So yeah, it'll be interesting, right? It will be interesting to see what happens because, you know, this it's going to be an anthology, right? So this is season 1. Season 2 will follow another couple in different countries. So, there's definitely a lot to say about these things. So it will be interesting to see, the subject explored, and I think a web series is always a fun way to do this kind of thing. We've seen different ones like avocado toast. There's been others. My mind's gone blank, but there's been others, people. So yeah, I think it's always an interesting way to go about a story because these episodes are about 15 minutes. You know what I mean? It differs slightly with each one. And that's the great thing about it, right? That you can do whatever you want. You're not confined to, this 30, 40, 50-minute slot. You decide how long you need to tell that story. So yeah, I've been enjoying it so far. So intrigued to see where we go with it. But people, play it by ear, definitely worth a check.